Well, I kind of live a boring life. Take two.
Most marijuana smokers are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage. Marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes and entertainers.
Marijuana? Well, I think it's a good thing.
The president allocated another $462 million for the drug war in 1974.
To the extent money can help in meeting the problem of dangerous drugs, it will be available.
The recommendation of the Commission in its first report is that we do not feel that private use or private possession in one's own home should have the stigma of criminalization.
In San Francisco, celebrating their victory, supporters of marijuana for medical use lit up. Smoking marijuana is, of course, illegal under federal law, so some insist these new state measures will result in a law enforcement nightmare.
We have a problem. Increasing numbers of Americans believe that marijuana is not harmful.
We want to make clear that federal law still applies, and federal officials will continue to apply the law.
Federal agents raided another medical marijuana store.
In the last 4 years, laws allowing for the medical use of marijuana have passed in 8 states.
Tell them that this war on marijuana is bullshit.
The DEA raided a medical marijuana
Modesto
club.
man accused of running a medical marijuana dispensary.
They're closing this one now. I don't want to have to go back to the streets to obtain my medicine.
I'm going to take your money, and then a short time later, I'm going to come back in with the DEA, and I'm going to send you off to federal prison. Well, that just didn't make sense to me.
Police department, search warrant!
Hit it.
Move! Get on the ground! Don't move! You understand? Put your hands behind your back! Do it now! Behind your back! I'm with you. Let's go.
I got him.
You got him, good. Police department, don't move! You got another injured one. Move.
My name is Charles C Lynch. I personally don't think my crime is as serious as a lot of things people do in the world. All right, here, this ball's lopsided, so.
I think that Charlie may have had a seatbelt violation or a speeding ticket that was dismissed. He went to defensive driving class or something, I'm not sure. But those are the only violations that Charlie has, only legal entanglements that he had up until now.
Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? You're not recording that, are you?
Charlie's a wonderful neighbor. We've lived here in Arroyo Grande next to Charlie. We moved in about 7.5 years ago, and Charlie shortly thereafter. Charlie's the perfect gentleman, and we've been just very, very happy to know him.
Okay, this is my invention, the remote quad. Actually, you know, you get so many remote controls these days, it just helps you manage up to 4 remote controls. They just kind of Velcro on there.
Never married, just, I don't know if it's me internally or what, I just never felt like getting married. Lots of cases, I just feel like I don't always blend in with society that well. For example, if I go to LA to some of the pubs down there, I just seem so normal compared to some of the really hip mod people that are hanging out down there. And then in other cases, I might go to another pub where there's bikers and people like that, where I don't really blend in there either. And then on the other end, I might go to another pub where people, I'm not quite like those people either, because they like to drink and party and stuff like that a lot more than I really like to do. And so finding my place in society has been a real social challenge.
When I get these migraine headaches, they come on kind of slowly. And the episodes last for anywhere from 3 to 4 months. Haven't really figured out what causes them. Trying to see if there's like some correlation between the weather. I also track like the pollen content on the websites and seeing if I can relate my headaches to any of these other factors. I'd gone to the doctors on numerous occasions, you know, trying to get some traditional medications that helped me out, and, you know, there was nothing that was helping me.
I can remember laying in bed for months at a time, miserable, and just wondering, you know, how I was going to beat this pain. So I had a friend who brought by information on medical marijuana laws.
The founder of modern medicine is generally conceded to be Sir William Osler, who wrote the first textbook of internal medicine in the late 1890s. And in that text and in each of the two subsequent ones that he wrote, he said cannabis was the best treatment for migraines. And it certainly is the best treatment for migraines. If you're retching, you really don't want to take a pill to stop it. You'd like to take something via the respiratory route because you're not going to throw it up. And also, it's going to be effective in 15 seconds, not 45 minutes or an hour.
So I dragged myself out of bed and got a doctor's recommendation and received my first supply of medical marijuana. I think it's better to perceive marijuana as a medicine, and if children are taught that marijuana is a medicine as opposed to a recreational drug, they'll understand that you only need your medicine when you're sick. You know, like children are taught that you don't take aspirin unless you're sick.
The first dispensary I went in and I just couldn't believe it, that this was possible, you know.
In my view, there is no legitimate medical marijuana dispensary. If you go in LA, there are more marijuana dispensaries than there are Starbucks or 7-Elevens combined.
The Cannabis app allows you to dynamically locate the nearest doctor, attorney, patient collective, and organization right through your iPhone. There's so many within this radius that it's taking a little bit of time for the green dots to populate.
An entire page here filled with marijuana ads. These places are open till sometimes 2 in the morning. They'll even drive up in a van and drop dope off at your house. And many of these will say cash only.
Green Cross Delivery, this is Darren.
Delivering is a much more expensive way of operating a business like this because you have to have so many people delivering, you have to have cars, you have to have the wear and tear on the vehicles, the gas. So there's a lot more involved in the time that it takes to serve one patient versus people coming to you.
Cash or debit? Cash. All right, Steve, we'll see you within the hour. Okay, thank you, bye. You're just getting off the freeway.
Okay.
So you just might be.
Okay. We make sure to get all our customers' information before we make the first delivery to them, their driver's license and their recommendation, so we verify everything that they're legal. The SFPD knows about the Green Cross, and they're pretty supportive of our business. We're permitted through both the state and the city, so they never hassle us at all.
Hello?
Hey David, hi, it's Gil with the Green Cross.
Okay, coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, here's my regular ID. I'll
you.
get my Green Cross ID, and here's my...
I talk to doctors every single day, and they really don't know what these patients would do without this medication. So to not be able to still deliver it would be crushing, but it's satisfying to see that end of the business because you don't really get to see that in a storefront environment.
Have a great day.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No problem. Bye.
I would like to see all the dispensaries in California gone. I don't think they serve any value to our communities.
Medical excuse marijuana, because that's really what we're all about here, isn't it? I mean, it's a medical excuse to get marijuana. One thing that sets the marijuana addiction apart from many of the others is the level of delusion, the level of self-deception that goes on with pot users. They kind of live in a fog. And in treatment, we saw over and over again, it would take 6 months to a year of complete sobriety before a person could look back at their marijuana problem or habits and say, you know, I was really having a lot of problems. And the fog begins to lift. And that is different than a lot of the other drugs of abuse.
every creature on this planet is here for good if we use it for good, and that it includes cannabis, and that this is a righteous, a positive thing to do as long as you're doing it in the right spirit, and as long as you're doing it with the right intent, and as long as you're doing it with the right tools. And this is what the THC Expo is about.
Yeah, 100% hemp hats. The hidden stash on the inside. Henry Hemp in the house.
Yo, hey.
All for.
You know how Henry Hemp ignites his day with a 420 hemp energy drink? It's the way. This is Jeffrey Peterson. Check him out. He's funny as.
It's almost like they're in a cult. They worship marijuana. They see it as their political goal, their reason for life. And anybody who opposes them, they viciously attack them.
You know, a lot of people are helped by medical marijuana or otherwise marijuana. And you want to come in and enforce your fucking authoritarian prick, fake Christian, blue law, control freak opinion on everyone else with the force of the federal government. You people are fucking evil. Kim Jong-il would love you, bastards.
Well, so much for marijuana making people mellow.
I have cerebral palsy. It's a condition caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain at birth. My condition manifests in severe speech spasms. That's the thing. They refuse to see film as a possibility, and a lot of people make money in film, but it's one of the most difficult industries to work in. Dispensaries really vary on the services that they provide. Harborside really endeavors to be more of a patient-centered clinic. They offer yoga, acupuncture, and hypnotherapy. And it is very clean. It looks like the Starbucks of cannabis dispensaries.
We wanted to create an environment where we could begin to heal medical cannabis patients from all of the trauma that they've suffered from having to buy their medicine illegally, from having had to hide their cannabis use from their friends and their family, for having to live in fear for all of these years. And let patients know that there was absolutely nothing wrong with what they were doing in terms of seeking out the medicine that they needed to heal.
So cannabis makes my speech spasms dissipate. So not only is it less painful for me to talk, but people can actually understand me. And that's really nice. My favorite thing to do is to go hiking with my children or spend a day at the beach. I'm really, really lucky.
Well, I had been traveling to the dispensaries down in Santa Barbara and to Oakland and to LA to receive my medical marijuana supplies. And I kind of wondered how come we didn't have one in our local area here. And so I became interested in helping other people
receive the things that help them get along in their life, kind of like it helped me.
I felt that operating a dispensary was leading edge. I was excited about doing that.
I figured if it can help me this much, then it's going to help a lot of other people in just as much or even more powerful ways. And it kind of gave me a sense of, you know, like I'm a part of society now. You know, I don't have to be a criminal to go out and get the things that help me with my life. You know.
Go through the FDA process. Why not go through the FDA process? What's the problem with going through the FDA process? People don't want to go through the FDA process because they're afraid that they then won't be able to smoke pot. There may be things in marijuana that could be helpful after we have the science, after we go through the FDA process, but right now the science just isn't there for it.
And you hear all of these people in government, as I call the drug warriors, and I've heard them myself say that no, there's no study that shows medical marijuana works. And you know something? They're right. So I say it's beyond hypocrisy, it's virtually chutzpah for the federal government to say, no, there are no studies, when it is the very reason why no studies have been conducted. Shame on them.
We are basically here because the government needs material for research, standardized material for research, and we just happen to be the ones in a position and know how to provide this material. The only institution that is able to distribute marijuana is the federal government. We are distributing marijuana, research material marijuana, not as the University of Mississippi, but as an arm of the federal government. We are the contractors of the federal government to do that.
It's under contract from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. It's not there, even though they may hint, it's not there to encourage the use of this material as a medicine. Instead, they, I would think they're there to inhibit any potential use of this plant material.
The yield study. How much material can you get out of a marijuana plant? It was very important for the sentencing guidelines.
His major thing is to take in samples of plant tissue that the Drug Enforcement Administration, the federal one, brings in, and he tests those to see what type of material's on the street.
I have done some contract work for the DEA to grow some plant material to find out certain things.
So those kind of things, permits are granted. The permit that's not granted is a permit to determine whether it's a medicine or not.
The issue of medical marijuana is really a bogus issue in a lot of ways. We just don't have the data to support this being used as a medicinal agent, as a drug per se. The work hasn't been done to prove that it is. And all the information that we have is anecdotal information. Might be true, but nonetheless, it doesn't meet the requirements of the approval process of a new drug.
I describe my profession as a crop physiologist. I look at myself as a person who works with plants. Since the early 1980s, I've been very interested in medicinal plants. I was called into the dean's office and asked if I would be able to grow some marijuana. I hear a lot of lay evidence about it. It's time that it was tested, because I think if a plant material is of benefit to humankind, then we should explore it like we do any other plant. So I sent the application off, and I didn't think any more about it for probably 8 months. So I called the DEA at the time, and I was told at the time by the person I talked to they'd never received this application. And I thought, that's funny. Must be some mistake somewhere. And I was told, yes, they'd found it, but it was I'd made a mistake on the application. And I said, and said, you better send in a new application, just start over again. We waited for a decision a long time, but they wouldn't make a decision. They did not want to reject it, but they certainly did not want to approve it. People I talked to, other investigators who have also tried to get a license, told me they're looking at your age and they plan on outweighting you. We decided to take them to court to force the DEA to make a decision. They finally made one, and that was to reject my application. We then took them to court at the front of an administrative judge, a federal DEA judge, in-house judge. The DEA judge agreed with my petition to get a license.
I read the judge's opinion on the matter, and I'm just wondering why she made the decision that she made.
I was excited when Judge Bittner within the DEA said yes, we should be granted a license. Then we have the downfall again. The decision was made that they were going to reject my application, that they were going to overrule the administrative judge. Why? Why? We investigate so many plants. We use plant material that's bad. And what's so special about this one that we can't see if it actually can benefit people? And if it can benefit people, then it should be available for people. If it's only a recreational drug, that's a whole other side to the argument. All I want to do is be able to supply material, quality material that can be used honestly in clinical trials, so that we can determine whether this is a useful medicine or not.
If Dr. Cracker or anyone else is interested in competing for this project, they should put a proposal in. And if they can prove that they can actually do this job, then they will have it, and I wouldn't. So I don't really have any problem with that.
In general, do I believe medical marijuana has enormous benefit for sick people? Yes. There's just absolutely no doubt. I know many of them personally, people ill with cancer, with different diseases that rely on it, and and thank God for it, because it is what relieves their pain, their nausea after taking radiation treatments, and I can go on. But yeah, there's absolute benefits for it, and it should be used. These people should have free access to it.
I'm a cancer specialist. I've been a cancer specialist now for almost 30 years. Every day in my practice, I see patients who are nauseated, who are losing weight, who have pain, who are depressed, and who are not sleeping. I can treat all of those patients with a single recommended drug, and that is cannabis.
I had an experience with drugs, legal drugs from drugstores, given to me by prescription from the doctor, and it stopped my kidney functions. I was in a hospital with 2 kidneys that went dead. I have artificial knees, 2 of them, and a bad back. So I stopped all drugs. The only drug that I use, or this medical marijuana, to take care of my problems that I used to take pills for and almost died.
Well, in preparation for opening the dispensary, and even before I started looking for a business location, of course I studied the California laws, I studied the Constitution. Got guns and stuff in there. Oh, look, tattoo parlor here.
He sees that there's a need for medical marijuana in his community. He does some research on the state law, sees that state law does permit the dispensaries. He sees that the state legislature believed that there was an exception to the federal prohibition through the residual clause of the 10th Amendment.
Well, so the 10th Amendment is part of the set of amendments that were adopted soon after the Constitution itself was ratified in 1787. And what it says is that powers that have not been granted to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states.
I studied the federal rules regarding marijuana, and so I went to the DEA website, and I found that marijuana was a Schedule I drug, right up there with what seemed like a lot more dangerous drugs like heroin and PCP and LSD, and they have strict penalties for the distribution or possession of marijuana. And so I was a little bit confused about this. So I decided to call up the DEA and find out their policies regarding the medical marijuana dispensaries and use in California. And so I called the number from my home phone, and I asked them what their policy regarding medical marijuana and medical marijuana dispensaries was. The person on the phone wasn't sure of the policy, and he told me to call my local DEA office, and he gave me a number to dial, and so I called the next number that he gave me. So I called my local DEA office, and a gentleman answered the phone, and I asked him what the local policies regarding medical marijuana and medical marijuana dispensaries was. And the DEA agent on the phone, he wasn't sure of the policies, and so he gave me another number to call. So I called the next number. I kind of felt like I was getting the runaround at this point, so I rephrased my question a little bit, and I said, well, I wonder what you guys are going to do about all these medical marijuana dispensaries across the state. And once again, the person on the telephone, they couldn't give me a straight answer, and he gave me another phone number to call. And so on my fourth attempt, I called the DEA office, which I believe was in Los Angeles, California. When I called that number, the first thing the person who answered the phone told me in a strong voice, she answered the phone, "Marijuana Task Force." I said, well, I was wondering what you guys are going to do about all the medical marijuana dispensaries across the state. And then the lady on the phone, she asked me how I got that number. I told her, then she says, well, hold on a minute, because she didn't know the answer either. I'm sure I'll hold, thank you. So I waited for quite a while, 3 or 4 minutes possibly, and eventually a gentleman came back online, and the gentleman told me that it was up to the cities and counties to decide how they wanted to handle the matter. That's up to the cities and counties? Okay. And so then after he told me that, I says, well, what if I want to open up my own medical marijuana dispensary? And then in an even more stern voice, kind of like he was a little irritated, in a stronger voice, he said, it's up to the cities and counties to decide how they want to handle the matter. So it just didn't seem like a big deal to the DEA agent at the time, and that was definitely key in me deciding to open up the dispensary.
Charlie wasn't the only person who called the DEA looking for guidance. Lots of people did. And I think every dispensary operator in the state was trying to figure out what their criteria were. You know, at that point, there were already dozens, if not hundreds, of dispensaries in the state. Some of them were operating and were not being targeted by the DEA. Others were targeted by the DEA. And we were all trying to figure out what criteria the DEA was using. And they were not forthcoming with that criteria. At least none of the attempts that any of us made to get guidance from them, none of those attempts were successful.
There was one city in the area in particular that was going to allow a dispensary, and that was the city of Morro Bay. And they informed me that they were going to allow a dispensary in the retail zone. And so I started looking for a storefront in the retail zone and eventually found a spot.
I had some reservations just about, I wasn't sure what the operation would be like, so I made it clear to Charles that it was a month-to-month rental agreement, and that if anybody complained, we'd give them notice, and he was fine with that.
Actually, the dispensary's just right down there, a couple buildings down. Over here we got the Bank of America, a music store there, and then right here we have a liquor store. So once I secured the location, then I filled out the City of Morro Bay business license. And about a month after I applied for the license, they gave me a call and told me that my business license was ready and I could come get it at any time.
The dispensary was not only legal, but it was sanctioned by the City of Morro Bay. Charlie had a business license from the City of Morro Bay, and right on the face of that business license it said, Medical Marijuana Dispensary. Charlie had a ribbon-cutting ceremony with the Chamber of Commerce. We had a tour with the mayor. We had a tour with the city attorney. We had a tour with the state county attorneys came through to view the dispensary. So everybody knew what Charlie was doing, and the city was behind him 100%.
What Charlie did was come down and tell us what he was doing. He contacted city staff and they relayed to us what he was doing. He invited us to come and tour his place. It was in the newspapers. I don't see any place where he was trying to be undercover at all.
But I did go around to all of the business owners that adjoined the facility, gave them my card, said if anything happens that you're not comfortable with or seems inappropriate, call me. Call the police if you want to, but call me, I want to know. Because this is definitely only going to succeed if it's done properly. And I never got a single call.
I've never had a tenant that was as meticulous in trying to comply with every part of government regulations and what our lease said.
After Charles opened, we got a few other ones that would come in that were not the same way. You know, the kind that wanted to just open up and didn't care where, or just started to open up without having their business license. But Charles came in first, and any conditions we ever wanted to Charles, or anything I asked, he was definitely kind of got his ducks in order.
If somebody violates the federal law, no matter how well-intentioned they are, they, first of all, violate the federal law, but they endanger other people by setting up these facilities. If there is no real proof that marijuana is a good medicine for all of the conditions that people were getting marijuana for, he could have harmed people, he could have killed people, he could have caused cancer, he could have caused birth defects. And the fact that he is, in quotes, a legitimate businessman still does not take us away from all the harm that he caused. And if somebody chooses to put other people at risk by selling a substance that can cause them damage, well, then they should be prepared to take that risk and the consequences of the risk.
I was 17 in high school, just about to graduate. Pretty oblivious to all the problems in the world. I played on the soccer team and I played on the football team. When I was younger, I played on the baseball team. I was playing soccer and it was really hurting one day when I was running. I went and got an MRI and it was just a medium-sized tumor just in the middle of my leg.
The doctor said, Owen, this is going to change your life. You're going to have a life-changing experience. You're probably going to amputate your leg. I was worried that he was going to die. Lose more than his leg, that we were going to lose, he could die. Owen's brother had died, so we had already lost one of our children, and we certainly didn't want to lose another child.
I woke up from surgery, it kind of felt like my leg was still there, but it felt like someone had driven, thousands of nails into where my leg would be. I would just lay awake at night because I couldn't go to sleep because it hurt so bad. And they tried giving me pills, they tried giving me, nerve blockers, but none of them worked.
There was still 3% alive, of tumor alive. So he had to continue with hardcore chemotherapy to kill whatever cells were still in his body.
It destroys your appetite, and then whatever you can eat, you throw up. They would give me hardcore painkillers, you know, they would just make me dull out basically and fall asleep.
You know, he took antidepressants, he took morphine. I mean, we had a whole medicine cabinet in there full of pills, and it did nothing. You know, we tried several things. We tried hypnotism. We tried, you know, we were open to everything. We were open to just anything that was available that would help Owen survive.
On that very first time he came in and brought his paperwork, he was with his mother. So with his mother there, we were allowed to, according to the city and the state, we were allowed to provide Owen access to medical marijuana for his pain and suffering that he was encountering.
So Owen got out of the car, and he had his crutches, and he had no prosthetic at that point, he had no leg. And it was on the second floor at the dispensary, and he had to go up the stairs. So I said, Owen, just stay here, I'll go up there.
I just told myself I'm getting up those stairs. You know, I'm getting this done. I'm not gonna let, you know, having one leg stop me from getting up these stairs.
So he wasn't eating very well, so it increased his appetite. He didn't throw it up as easily, but I think that the most benefit I saw from it was after the amputation, was the relief that he got from the phantom pain.
You know, I think the marijuana helped my attitude a lot too. Because if I had to sit there every day in the hospital with, you know, just painkillers, I would be miserable.
It's a relief to find something that is so benign, you know, that would help.
Sadly, you know, when your children are suffering, your judgment probably goes right out the window. Realistically, he was probably getting the same pot in the dispensaries that he was getting on the street from drug dealers. There's not some magic that makes the pot with dispensary a better pot. It's just it's a quasi-legal type of way to do it. It's a shame. I'd have to ask the question, what other types of care did he fail?
Pull it all up and slide it right into the sea leg. Pulling the sock over.
Yeah, it's definitely a sad situation for such a nice guy. I mean, after his chemotherapy and the amputation of his leg, you know, I could gradually see that he was getting better. And actually, the last time I saw him, he looked really well. You know, his hair had grown back. You couldn't really tell that he had a prosthesis when he was walking around, and he just seemed a lot better. But I know that he went through some really difficult times.
Several times we would go in and Charlie would say, "You don't pay, we'll take care of it," because he was just kind of a compassionate kind of a guy. And he says, you know, just here, you don't need to be paid. You just take this and take care of yourself. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Well, I remember seeing a motorhome parked on one of the side streets. Now that I think back, I remember the van. It was parked across the street, and at the time I didn't know it, but they were videotaping our patients coming and going from the dispensary. They were videotaping my employees coming and going from work, and they were zooming in on license plates. And from my perspective, they were invading our privacy rights as patients.
In Charlie's case, the sheriff of San Luis Obispo, that's Sheriff Pat Hedges, took it upon himself to investigate Charlie's dispensary, investigated his patients, his employees. His deputies followed his patients. They even looked in their windows.
It was the sheriff's department that took it upon themselves to keep an eye on Charlie. Let's face it, the sheriff's department wants to be in charge of pot in our county. The best day for the sheriff's department is when they get to dress up in paramilitary outfits and go up in a helicopter and then rappel down into some pot field. So the sheriff wants to be in charge of pot in our county, and when that dispensary opened, the only dispensary in the whole county, that was a rock in their shoe.
What bothered you about Charlie Lynch's clinic?
Well, the problem with Charlie Lynch's clinic was that it was illegal. Citizens of California did pass a proposition that did allow individuals to possess marijuana for serious illnesses. It did not allow for the establishment of a business, a retail sales location, to actually sell marijuana.
There are still hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not.
Pat Hedges, I'm not sure what he really had against the dispensary. We never had any problems. He never called me with any indications that there were problems with the dispensary or any of its members.
There are provisions in California law that allows for those who are truly suffering from serious illness to acquire this controlled substance through a caregiver. An illegal marijuana distribution center is not the same as a caregiver.
If you're saying that these dispensaries are illegal because they themselves are not the caregivers, then how would a person...
As the caregiver.
Yeah, I mean, doctors don't stock prescriptions. They send you to a pharmacy. This is essentially the marijuana equivalent of a pharmacy. So if you stop people's access to a pharmacy or a medical marijuana distribution center, how do they get their medicine?
How is the caregiver to get the marijuana? I can't tell you.
It's the people's duty themselves to enact those laws. So what's happened is people have been doing this, and people and the naysayers or the law enforcement come in and say, you're doing it wrong, but we're not going to tell you how to do it right.
All right, so you coming out of that weed college today. You want to explain what you're doing?
Exercising my First Amendment rights.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Let's see, we got here, looks like conspiracy to grow cannabis, if I've ever seen it. You want to explain to me what you're doing with those paper materials?
Reading them.
Oh, we got smart people. They've been going to that school, huh? All right, so let's see what we got here. Well, oh, yeah, this looks like hydroponic growing equipment. I assume you're not growing tomatoes, right? What, got no answers what you're doing with 4,000 watts of high-intensity discharge lighting? I got nothing out of these guys.
What's he doing? Is he just not talking? Nothing? No luck, huh? All right. So this first role play that we have going on, way to remain silent. Federal officers do not have any more authority to take away your constitutional rights because they're federal. These are your rights, regardless of what type of badge you're talking to. Well, yeah, I was getting my medicine on the
drugs in this car.
Well, I have. Well,
you seem
not
really nervous.
Not illegal.
What?
I
You
have.
license yet?
Not illegal. By not illegal, you mean?
Well, I have my medicine. It's cannabis. It's
You
my,
have
it's
your
my
driver's
marijuana. It's my medical marijuana, and I have.
Go ahead and step
here,
out
I
of the
have
car.
this. Well, no. Here's the driver's
Right.
license.
Go ahead and step out of the
and
car,
we're just
ma'am.
Why
fine.
don't you come out?
Ma'am, go ahead and
deal.
step out of the
Step
car.
out.
So what did I do wrong? Yes. Broken taillight before I even got into the car. Guys, how many of these busts happen because you're speeding, because your taillight's out, because your headlight's out, because you're swerving?
Okay, do you know why I stopped you?
No, I don't.
You didn't use your signal when you changed lanes? You know the bus was behind you? So do you use medical marijuana?
What's that?
Do you use medical marijuana? Okay, so there's no marijuana in the car.
Actually, there is just 3 plants. I have my license. I've taken it over to someone who grows legally.
You don't have anything in the trunk either?
No, just my clothes.
Okay, go ahead and just stay right there. So, I think that you should just go ahead and tail him to that house and see what's there. I'm sure he's growing a lot more than 12 plants. All right, man. I'm just gonna let you go with a warning on that. Don't be doing that kind of stuff until you're totally okay to do that. You know, because I could arrest you for a felony right now.
I know.
Okay. And you don't want that.
I'm like wondering if I should.
You don't want that on your record.
I even want to like work here because I know people need it, and I know like I need it sometimes, but it's just with the laws, and it's just scary, you know. And
that's your receipt.
I'm really just trying to abide by the laws.
I don't know, man. That's a whole decision that you have to make, right? Okay.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Hey, take it easy, okay? Don't forget to shut your door.
The other aspect of running the dispensary was to validate patients and make sure that all the paperwork that was coming into the business was valid. And so I had a receptionist. She could tell when people were lying a lot better than I could. At one point we had a teacher, a respected member of the community, coming in with a fake recommendation. We also had a county worker who could have probably qualified with his medical conditions, yet he chose to try to fake us out with a fake recommendation, and we caught him on that.
Well, this guy came in, he had a letter from a doctor from this area, but he had an Arizona driver's license, and he didn't have anything with a local address on it. And so they told him that he had to have a valid California driver's license to be able to use their facility. And so he said, "Oh, come on, man, just this time." And they said, "No, we got our rules, I'm sorry. There's the door." And they showed him out.
The sheriff investigated the dispensary for a year and couldn't come up with anything. They couldn't even get a search warrant from a judge. Why? Because there was no state law violations there. If there was, they would have gotten a search warrant and they would have come into the dispensary on their own. Instead, after the end of a year, they got frustrated.
6 or 7 deputies, constant surveillance of Charlie's dispensary. And as I said, I think the taxpayers would be appalled at the expense involved in the investigation of Charlie's dispensary.
1 or 2 tries, if you can't do it, you know, if there's real drug dealers out there, stop spending the money. That's would have been my attitude.
Why do we perpetuate this failed program of drug prohibition? And the answer is basically most people know that what we're doing isn't working. In fact, many people in Washington will make the comment to you, as they do to me, the war on drugs is not winnable, but it's eminently fundable, and the federal agencies are addicted to that drug war funding.
If you can come up with a whole lot of arrests and a whole lot of seizures, well, then you get more federal funding, then you can apply more officers to that particular program. You get newer cars, you get new equipment, you get bigger expense accounts, bigger undercover ops money, and helicopters, you name it. You know, the federal government will pay for it.
And so what did they do? They said, okay, we'll show these guys. We'll just call the DEA and tell the DEA that we need help and that they need to come up to Morro Bay for a day, and we've got a nice job for them.
I would be hesitant to call any federal agency to come in and do my police work for me. If I had that great a concern about the issue, we would do the best we could to find a sufficient probable cause to get our own search warrant and do our own police work.
There's nothing in the law, any law, or in the proposition that says that medical retail dispensaries for marijuana are authorized, legal, or allowed.
A raid by armed federal agents.
Local medical marijuana users will have to go elsewhere for the time being after federal agents and sheriff's deputies shut off their supply. The Arroyo Grande home of dispensary operator Charles Lynch was also raided Thursday morning. Lynch has not been arrested, but charges may be forthcoming.
I had just woken up, so I didn't have any clothes on. I heard banging at my door. They were yelling at me to open the door, search warrant, search warrant, search warrant, open the door. I was in shock, and I yelled out the door saying I didn't have any clothes on, and they told me to open the door, they were gonna tear it down. And so I opened the door, and in came a flood of federal agents and sheriff's deputies in war gear. And they threw me on the floor in the bedroom and held a gun to my head.
I just think it's just totally inappropriate, and I am particularly upset with the county sheriff in doing the federal government's nasty work.
They had a press conference on the day of the raid. They set up their spokesperson outside of the dispensary and proceeded to tell the public that this was about money laundering and dealing on a big scale and sales to minors and anything that they could think of that sounded bad. But the truth was something different.
We've investigated violations of both federal and state law involving this business, but the warrant today was based on violation of federal law and signed by a federal magistrate.
And when the state passes a law and that law is in effect, that's the law I would think they should be enforcing. So they shouldn't be collaborating with federal agents to enforce a law that is no longer on the books in the state.
If the business of a state is so obnoxious to you, then you better not live there. But I wouldn't interfere with their right to do it.
Our governor hasn't said a word about these raids. So they're, in essence, by their silence, allowing the federal government to come in and bully our own citizens.
This is Action News at 11.
A note reading "All hippies die" is found in the Morro Bay pot dispensary just as its operator starts to pick up the pieces after a federal raid.
As Charles Lynch entered the dispensary this morning to start over, he claims he was greeted by a disturbing note reading "All hippies die."
You can't just march in as law enforcement into someone's home or someone's business and take their records and take their documents and invade their privacy. You have to have probable cause under the Fourth Amendment to do so. So 1 year's worth of investigation by the sheriff yielded no probable cause. Yet the DEA had probable cause because what Charlie was doing technically was a violation of federal law. So the feds came in under the federal search warrant. The sheriff assisted, and there was a quid pro quo, as the feds gathered up the evidence and then had an agreement with the sheriff's department that they would hand off the evidence to the sheriff's department, so the sheriff's department would get the benefit of all this evidence and the federal investigation without the benefit of a state search warrant.
Hi, is this Nick? Hi, Nick. My name's Detective Nottenkamper from the Sheriff's Department. Hey, we're contacting everybody that had gone to the Cannabis Club in Morro Bay, and we just wanted to get your opinion on how you felt that you were treated over there.
I don't know. They're pretty strict, as far as I know.
Yeah? Did you
that you always had to have a card, and they always had someone at the door, and then there was always like two guys at the stairs.
Did they ever sell to you outside the club?
No, you couldn't even have people waiting in the car when you got in there.
Oh, okay. What was your medical condition?
I had ADHD.
You had attention deficit?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much would you usually get when you
They still have our medical records. I'm still upset about that. I feel like I have a right to my own medical records. And under the HIPAA law, they were never supposed to take those. They're never supposed to keep those.
They took his prescription, you know, which made us have to go back up to Stanford and get another prescription so that he could have medical marijuana. I mean, I just think these guys don't get it.
Here we have a population in the county of about 263,000 people, and a little over 2,000 of those people are claiming that they have serious medical needs, that their only relief is through the use of marijuana. And of those over 2,000 people, we found that over 270 of those people were minors under the age of 21.
The mayor of your town, the city council, the town attorney, they all supported this clinic. The Chamber of Commerce, they showed up for the ribbon cutting.
I believe they did, but that doesn't mean that it's legal.
I feel that like if the DEA had given me warning before they raided me and indicted me, and then I probably would have closed down the dispensary if they would have asked me, but at no point along the way did anybody from the federal government ever contact me or give me any warning as to them wanting me to shut down. Anyway, I don't know what I could have done anyway if I would have known they were coming. I wasn't about to start destroying evidence or anything like that, or running or hiding. I mean, that was my job, to run the dispensary in a legal and legitimate way.
Charlie was given his business license back by the city attorney. He spoke to his landlord, and then he went home and watched television one night, and what he saw on the local news station was a sheriff's spokesperson, one of the people who had held him at gunpoint, get on the tube and say,
he's free to do whatever he decides he wants to do with the business.
He was welcome to stay as a tenant, and I let him know that, and he was very appreciative.
There's some more deputies walking around with their guns and handcuffs ready to go. And the city of Morro Bay reissued my business license and nursery permit, both of which were seized by the federal government. One of the other main things was the patients who depended on me. They were depending on me to provide them with safe access to the medical marijuana, and for me to just give up after the raid would have seemed cowardly on my part. After reopening the dispensary, after about a week, maybe 2 weeks of operating, my landlord called me.
I got a call one day from somebody who identified himself as and I have some notes on it, but a federal agent. And he says, this is just a courtesy call to let you know that we had raided your building the other day, or raided a tenant in your building. And I thought, my reaction was 3 weeks late, was a little bit late to be giving me a courtesy call, but I said, yes, I was aware of it. And then he said, are you aware that we can seize your building if he continues to be there? And I said, no, I wasn't aware of that.
They are telling the landlords that unless you evict this tenant, which we're unable to do because we don't have the resources, we're going to forfeit your property. And the landlords, naturally, are terrified.
And I got a little angry. I said, you know what? He complies with state law, local law. He has all the permits. Why are you putting the small businessman in the middle of this? If this is an issue between the federal government and the state government, why don't you guys talk about it? Why are you taking it out on the guy on the street? And he said, well, he says, I see what you're saying, but I'm just telling you that we have the right to seize your building. So I called Charles. I explained that we had to give him notice. He said, I completely understand, and I gave him written notice, and he was out either on time or early, and left the building in beautiful shape, and we gave him his deposit back.
San Luis Obispo County's only medical marijuana dispensaries has shut its doors for good. The attorney for compassionate caregivers in Morro Bay says the landlord canceled its month-to-month lease. Last Wednesday was the last day in business. The attorney says federal drug enforcement agents threatened to take the building if the landlord didn't kick out the dispensary. Because medical marijuana is illegal under federal law, the DEA has that right.
Medical doctors are now being usurped in their powers of deciding what viable medications for their patients by police officers who literally are practicing medicine without a license.
Dang! All right, the famous Lynch hook shot. Oh. Then I continued on my life, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I started interviewing for a job. And actually, I was having a difficult time trying to find employment after the raid. And then on July 17th, 2006, I awoke to pounding at my door and my bedroom windows, and I was told to come to the front door. And I opened the door, and there was a posse of sheriffs, deputies, and DEA agents telling me to step outside. And so I stepped outside the door. and they told me to turn around, and they handcuffed me, and they told me I was under arrest for violations of federal law regarding medical marijuana. I was in shock and disbelief. I just couldn't believe this was happening to me. They took me to LA where hundreds of dispensaries are operating and put me in a federal detention center. They didn't even let me make any phone calls from the federal detention center for 2 days.
Charlie was brought in, and of course, prison attire and shackles on his legs where he could hardly walk, and his hands in handcuffs. And it was heartbreaking for me to see him like that.
My family came and we posted bond for him, which was $400,000. And in federal court, there's no 10% bail bonds. You know, you have to put up the full amount.
One of the local sheriffs here in our San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department was recently indicted for child pornography. And, you know, he was arrested at the federal level and charged with federal crimes just like I was.
FBI agents say they searched Goossen's home last July and found videos containing child porn on his computer.
His crime only required a $5,000 bail.
Why Charles Lynch? Why Morro Bay? I mean, we don't even have a jail cell in the city of Morro Bay. You know, it's a town of 10,000 people, very quaint. We have no crime whatsoever.
There was no problem whatsoever. Yeah.
No problem. They didn't bother us.
There wasn't a lot of riffraff people
No.
hanging around?
No, not at all, no.
It wasn't like he posted bond and was able to go about his business. He was under house arrest. One of the conditions of the bond was that he was to stay at his home. And he has an ankle monitor, a GPS device.
I couldn't leave the house except to go to the doctors. It's kind of like the modern day ball and chain here. So I'll give myself a little bit of playrooms.
People in America probably don't really appreciate their freedom until it's infringed upon. Having to wear an ankle monitor, it's a disgrace to a good and honest person.
Actually, the day after Christmas they came, and I had family here, and they came knocking at the door, and everybody's like saying, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I says, "Well, they can come search the place whenever they want, you know." And so they took me into the restroom there and gave me a drug test on the spot. They kind of searched through to make sure everything was all right. They even talked with my family a little bit. They were wondering who everybody was and, you know, what they were doing here. You know, if you put some animals in a cage, no matter how nice the cage is, you know, they might not make it for very long in that cage, you know.
At one point, Charlie called me and he said, "Mom, I'm losing touch with the outside world. I'm becoming a recluse." He said, "I just don't know how much longer I can stand it."
Hello, Mr. Ibanez. This is Charles Lynch reporting in on January 16th, 2008. Just let you know, I broke my arm in the past couple weeks, as you know, and I went into the hospital, had surgery. I'll try calling you later to get the okay to drive my mom to the airport. And hope everything's going good for you, and thank you, and talk to you soon. Bye.
When Charlie's dispensary closed down, we had to find another source of medical marijuana for Owen. So eventually I found a guy that sold dispensary quality marijuana out of a back of a car. And he would meet me wherever I asked him to, or an agreed upon place that we both knew. We would find a place that, like a hospital parking lot, a mall parking lot that I knew about, and we would meet there. I was feeling apprehensive because I didn't know this guy, first of all. Didn't know anything about him, and if he was a undercover narc or sheriff, or I didn't know anything about him. I just knew that I needed to get some stuff, and I was thinking, boy, what am I doing? I'm going to get arrested. He's probably got under surveillance, and you're probably going to have 100 policemen surround me at any time.
That this was something a doctor had still recommended, and we were still trying to help him the best we could, and a sick son up in a hospital room, sick. We were just driven, I guess, by that.
Here comes a car.
Oh, geez, oh, there he is.
Black.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Get out.
Okay, be careful.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it gets him.
Steve?
Cash. Always paid cash. You know, you're out in a parking lot in a public place, and cars driving by, people walking by. It was a busy area.
I mean, it was nothing like going to Charlie's. It was like a deal on the streets more, you know? Kind of like if you walked up to somebody on the corner and they were saying, this is, you know, you're dealing. A lot more like that.
You know, he appeared to me legitimate, but nonetheless in the parking lot, it was kind of frightening. Stick this in your purse. $100.
Oh, let's hurry up. Get out of here.
It is easier for our young people today to get marijuana than it is a six-pack of beer. For example, you go on any high school campus, junior college, college campus, and you will have people offering free samples of marijuana or sales of marijuana. But you don't have that phenomenon with Budweiser beer or with Jim Beam bourbon. Why? Because the alcohol is regulated and controlled by the government, and the illegal drugs are controlled by illegal drug dealers, and they don't ask for ID. So the ultimate lesson here is, as soon as you prohibit a substance, you give up all of your ability to regulate or control it or have any say whatsoever about those areas, and you abandon them to the illegal drug dealers.
My trial began on July 23rd, 2008, down in Los Angeles.
All right, let's go, green team. Onward.
Many jurors that stated their opinion on medical marijuana, whether it be pro or con, were excluded from to be a potential juror. And the people who really spoke out, like one girl, I remember her saying that her friend had cancer and that he used medical marijuana and that she would not be able to be impartial as far as being a jury member, and she was immediately released. Another guy, he held a medical marijuana card, and when he spoke up, he was actually, I think, kind of afraid that he was going to get arrested for holding a card, you know, because he said, I didn't know it was illegal, I thought it was legal.
Jurors who spoke up and said, this doesn't seem fair, we don't really understand this, they were all excluded.
The mention of the word of medical marijuana raised constant objections from the prosecutor.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's support, definitely.
The prosecutor kept insisting and calling the dispensary a store.
He just looked like a little neat and clean businessman doing book work and taking care of things and pleasant, and there's just no way we were gonna, or I would think he was a drug dealer.
It was amazing. They'd say, well, he was selling drugs to minors, you know, and this, but yet they would have, you know, receipts that he gave to these people, and it's, what kind of drug dealer gives receipts?
They had actually gone through my records that they were using against me and redacted, which means blacked out, so the jury couldn't see the most of the information, especially when it said medical marijuana or for medical use like that.
This is what every single patient at the Central Coast Compassionate Caregivers saw and was required to sign. This is what Charlie Lynch's jury saw.
It's strange that no medical evidence was allowed into the courtroom, and it is about a medical marijuana dispensary.
Well, the mayor couldn't testify that, that the city had written me a business license. The city attorney couldn't say anything about the business license or the nursery permit that I had.
It is not a defense that they were involved with a state-sanctioned program of medical marijuana. And so therefore the evidence is not allowed in, and that makes perfect legal sense. It's not rational, it's not something I agree with, but conceptually it is appropriate. And if I were a federal judge, I too would have to follow the law. So I really sympathize with the federal judges. The federal judges know what's going on, but many of them agree that this isn't working, but they're required by their oath of office to follow federal law.
One of the things that they suggested Charlie was lying about was this conversation with the DEA.
They got in contact with the person that I spoke to at the DEA. Actually, she wasn't the person who gave me the answers to my questions. She was the person who answered the phone. She didn't remember my phone call, and she swore under oath that she would never answer her telephone marijuana task force. But I know what I heard that day. I called the DEA, and this agent's testimony was not only inaccurate, but it was incomplete, and it seemed like she had been coached on what to say and what to remember.
Now Lynch is being tried on federal charges his attorneys say could carry a prison sentence of up to 100 years. In court, prosecutors contend Lynch should have known better, that he violated federal law by selling huge amounts of marijuana, some of it to teenagers.
After a certain point, it was very clear that there was not going to be any testimony from anybody who looked sick.
It was a really transparent effort to pick people who looked kind of hippie, kind of young, people who could clearly walk up and down the stairs, and show only those people to the jury. And so I think Owen really showed how hypocritical that was.
Everyone was kind of hushed when I was entering, and then when I actually got on the stand after they swore me in, I was allowed to answer a few questions. But when I actually got to how I knew Charlie Lynch, the judge actually cut me off at about my second sentence.
Owen started to say, well, I know him because my doctor at Stanford, my oncologist at Stanford, prescribed medical marijuana to me. And then, and I think right about, and then the judge, not the government, the judge excused the jury and basically said that Owen was not going to be allowed to testify.
I think he made an impression on the jury, and I think that's part of the reason why his testimony was cut short so quickly, because it really did undermine this farce or this false picture that the government was trying to paint of Charlie Lynch.
I can understand why they don't allow cameras into federal courtrooms, because I think if the public was to see what was going on, especially in my case, that there may be some public outcry and public objection to pulling the wool over juries' eyes and not letting them make a decision based on all the facts.
I had this terrible dilemma of reconciling two conflicting laws, and one man's life was at stake.
Under the federal law, we had no choice but to find Mr. Lynch guilty on those charges.
The jury came back with guilty verdicts on all 5 counts. We're really disappointed.
We knew that what we were there for was whether he sold marijuana from his establishment.
It's the difference. If you don't know what you didn't hear, you don't know you didn't hear it. You know what I mean? We didn't know what we didn't hear. We heard enough to make a decision based on what we did hear.
It really crushed him. You know, we don't experience that in the same way that he does. You know, we move on, but to be next to him when he got the news was tough because he took it really hard.
It's really hard to describe how it feels to transition from being a productive member of society, a well-known, respected person, to a convicted felon. It's just it's a terrible feeling.
I would guess, and it would be just a guess, that each juror would assume that upon conviction that Judge Wu would have the discretion to make a smart choice about what to do. Namely, nice guy, was trying to do the right thing, let's slap him on the wrist with probation.
One of the things about the federal system is that there are mandatory minimums. The judges in federal court don't have a lot of flexibility. They have to sentence you to a minimum term if you're convicted of a particular charge. As a result, Charlie's facing up to 40 years in federal prison on these charges.
40 years? Hardened criminals are not even sentenced to 40 years.
Now we're in a position where Charlie unknowingly may bear a burden that's larger than him.
We're going to do everything we can to keep Charlie out of prison. It's going to be tough.
I've been demonstrating for only important things in my life. The first was Vietnam. The second was equal pay for equal work. Nothing has been as important as today is for me to come out and demonstrate. The people that are trying to help us are abiding by all the rules and all the regs, and then they're punished. Why don't they use the resources to go after the real criminals, not the patients?
And if they can take Charles Lynch, they can take anyone standing in this crowd. So we have to take a stand, and we need Charles to have another day in court, a fair day in court. We need a new trial for Charles Lynch.
Woo! What happened in this case is not just a travesty of justice. It is a cruel and contemptible violation of the will of the people of this state, violation by a federal administration so obsessed with its futile war on drugs that it is willing to persecute sick people and their caregivers.
Thanks everybody for coming down today. It means a lot to me. We're here not only for me today, but we're here for all those other people that are suffering the prosecution and persecution. So thank you everybody for being here, man. It's my heart.
If you don't have the power, if you just let it slide, you will spend your waking hour on a cold, hard, lonesome ride. They do not know where you're going. They have not walked in your shoes.
if I am taken into custody, I'll have no choice really. I'll just have to go. And you know, I'm gonna do the best I can to control my emotions and keep up my hope and my strength, and not let this persecution ruin my soul and my heart.
Know where you're going. They have not.
If I gotta go do time, I'll go do the time. And although I pray that I don't have to do time, but if I'm forced to do that, then I'll do that in a respectable manner.
It's clear in a fixed match, the underdog will always lose.
Well, today the Obama administration told federal prosecutors not to go after people who use or distribute marijuana in compliance with state medical marijuana laws. Supporters of legalized marijuana use are praising the Justice Department for the memo sent to federal prosecutors.
It's a good thing for California. It's a good thing for the other 12 states that have medical marijuana laws.
The new policy doesn't change anything for local law enforcement.
The issue is that marijuana is still illegal in California. And dispensaries are being shut down that are not in compliance with either state or federal regulation.
And Charles Lynch will be sentenced in a Los Angeles courtroom March 23rd. Once that's done, he says he will appeal his case and ask for a pardon from the president.
All right, so if you're going in the hole $4,314 a month, I know, and again, I know you're trying to live on what accumulated savings you have. I just want to be sure that that number doesn't move.
Not only does the federal government arrest you and put you in jail and have you facing a mandatory minimum of 5 years per charge, but they also take all your money.
Charlie's case, he's had a double whammy. He got hit with the prosecution action and the consequences of that, and then he got hit with this recession. Combination of the two have thoroughly destroyed his finances.
Everything that I had, my house, my cars, my music equipment, all of that stuff was subject to seizure because they implied that I had gained all those possessions through illegal profiteering. Well, these are the final documents for me to sign for bankruptcy. Darn it. I think I shook him loose on that last one.
If Charlie Lynch goes to prison, without getting too hyperbolic about it, Charlie Lynch would effectively become a political prisoner in a dispute that he didn't ask to get into the middle of.
There is no easy answer to this issue. As long as there's conflicting state and federal law, this is going to occur.
Well, I guess we're not going to win one today.
I always taught my children as they were growing up, you get along, there are solutions to everything. If there's a problem, we resolve it. I don't understand why the federal government and the state can't get together and resolve their problems.
The problem here is the discrepancy between the state law and the federal law. And if this case publicizes that discrepancy to a point where somebody deals with what the problem is, that would be a very good thing.
Congress needs to solve this problem. There is no other way to get this solved except for Congress to change federal law.
I think the government has learned from the prohibition of alcohol
what happened. No alcohol, we make our own. If you make a law against pot, we'll make our own, and the government doesn't have that many police to do it, to find everybody. It's a foolish law now. It is time to get forward and allow people to use this for their medical problem. If you don't have medical problem, they'll drink martinis.
You know, I've often felt that my job is to produce science that might bring some evidence to the argument, but I don't really think that matters. I think it's all politics.
Good, I'll have one super and one mega quick pick. I'm playing the lotto right now. Get some quick picks. This is kind of like a little bit of hoping for the best, because I'm so deep in the hole right now since I was arrested and prosecuted. It's been difficult to find a regular job, so hopefully I'm going to win the lottery tonight. All right, thanks, man. Take care. Kind of like my will and testament, and just in case I go to jail, I got some instructions for my mom about my passwords on my computer, and you know, my lawyers, and just some instructions to get in the house and how to wrap things up for me.
The law was very clear. He chose to disregard that law. And there is a consequence for that. And it was a consequence that was even supported by the Obama administration. They sent a letter to the judge saying it was okay to sentence him for that.
So I don't like to see people go to jail, but if it were my kid buying pot there, I'd probably be pretty upset, and I'd probably be saying, hey Charlie, fine, go on to jail and don't come back.
I've been unable to meet my financial obligations. It's been difficult to find work. I've fallen behind on my mortgage now, and I'm facing foreclosure here in the coming months. And so I've begun to pack up my personal belongings and move them into storage. And with what's happened to me, I'm kind of in a way at a dead end. I have no job to go to. If I leave this house, I have no house to go to.
As a Christian, I'll pray for anybody, and I really hope that he's come to terms with what he did and maybe can join our side one of these days, saying, you know what I did was wrong and shouldn't have done it, and you know, I'd really like to be part of the solution now and not part of the problem.
Almost all of these toys in here I won on that game. One of my friends' kids or birthdays having a party or something, or I'll give them, you know, use them as gifts and stuff. But they're just, for right now, they're just going into storage with everything else, I guess. Just like me. I hope someday that we can look back at these situations and not necessarily laugh, but just remember, you know, what our country's about. It's just my future's so unknown at this point that it's a little unnerving. I wouldn't say I'm scared, but it's unnerving, and it's hard to leave your home, especially when you don't know where you're going. I don't have anywhere to go from here.
stole the soul? And who stole the heart? And who took the spark from inside of me? Well, why can't I breathe? And I'm afraid they won't stop till all the poets have failed, till all the good men are jailed for nothing at all. Let them take the fall.
I had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. In November, I lost my youngest son to the complications of diabetes. He was 45, and I refused to lose another son to the federal government. I refuse. I will not do it.
And they'll bring devastation and call it diplomacy, but an occupation won't bring a nation peace. Ooh, and I'm so ashamed. And these things beyond value, oh, that we cherish so dear, I won't let them go. No, I won't let them go.
Marijuana as the plant material is a very good plant. That God created that plant with a lot of promise. What we need to do is we need to look at that plant and what it has, and get those chemicals, these components out of the plant and develop them as pharmaceuticals.
And who stole the soul? And who stole the heart? And I got back the spark from inside of me. Oh, and I can finally breathe. Hear the shuffle of my dancing feet.
In my lazy boy, just watching my TV, there's something that the newsman can't explain to me. Maybe I'm just paranoid as I set my reefer down. If there's a war on drugs going on, how come they're all around? But we're winning the war on drugs, we're winning the war on drugs. Praise the Lord and pass the ball, we're winning the war on drugs. You can grow them in your backyard or score them off the thugs. Put your hands against the car, we're winning the war on drugs. Tony scored 10 kilos from a pair of shiny black shoes, with an eagle in his haircut and an earphone on his tongue. After he got busted, he couldn't make no bail, 'cause we're making money off the stash.